can, of course. And as always, God bless you all.
A very good evening and welcome to Primetime News here on TV1. You're joining me, Debbie Paldano. Now, before we head into your stories in more detail, let's first take a look at your headlines this evening. Shots fired at group that tried to steal metal close to the port access road. 9 people injured. Environmentalists call for bribery investigation, alleging that Sri Lanka's renewable energy sector was sold to 2 Indian firms. PUCSL chief reveals of a plan to divide and sell the CEB and to abolish the PUCSL via a new act.
ඒ නිසා මෙලා හදන්නේ දැන් කොමිසම අයින් කරලා වෙන කොමිසමක් ගෙනාවම බලයක් නැති වෙනවනේ. මේ වගේ මෝඩ තකතිරු වැඩ තමයි මේ දේශපාලනඥයෝ කරන්නේ.
Heavy rains to continue. Landslide early warnings for 3 districts remain in effect. Now taking a detailed look at one of your headline-making stories. 9 people were injured and hospitalized following a shooting incident that took place close to the Colombo harbour yesterday night. Police spokesperson SSP Nihal Taldua said a group that attempted to steal metal from a storage close to the port access road were injured in the incident. An altercation had broken out when 2 private security officers assigned to protect a storage facility attempted to detain 2 men who tried to enter a storage facility located on the site of the expressway construction adjacent to the Colombo harbour. It was reported that the men attempted to steal metal from the premises. Sri Lanka police said that a group of locals had thereafter entered the premises and behaved in an unruly manner and had attempted to snatch the weapons issued to the private security personnel. At that moment, one of the 2 private security officers had discharged his weapon. 9 people, including 4 women and 5 men, were injured in the shooting and were hospitalized.
There are reports that claim that certain individuals enter the premises by cutting the fence located near the port. That is how they steal iron and other material from the premises. Entering the port premises without authorization is a punishable offence. In addition, if you try to assault and scuffle with others by forming groups, we warn you not to do so. An arrest was not made. In addition to private security personnel, licensed firearms have been issued for various security reasons. Civilians are often issued a licensed firearm to protect their crops from animals. At the same time, private security officers are also issued firearms. They have the legal right to use force to protect the life of a person and if their own life is at threat in the middle of a robbery. This is mentioned in the complaint and an investigation will reveal the true nature of the events.
විමර්ශනය කළා සැබෑ ලෙසම කුමක්ද සිදුවුනේ කියන කාරණේ අපි අනාවරණය කරගත යුතු වෙනවා.
No further revelations have been made with regard to the allegations raised that a bribe of $250 million was solicited from the Express Pearl maritime disaster. On the 25th of April, Justice Minister, President's Counsel Dr. Vijaydas Rajapaksa told Parliament that the money solicited from the bribe was deposited to the account of a person identified as Chamara Gunasekara. The minister said he would not take the responsibility for the information presented to the Parliament and noted that the true nature of it should be exposed following a police investigation. Former Minister Professor G.L. Piris, speaking to reporters, said that authorities have failed to make any revelations with regard to Chamara Gunasekara. He said the Central Bank of Sri Lanka also had a responsibility to expose these details to the country.
Chamara Gunasekara is a Sri Lankan name and this needs to be investigated. Does such a person actually exist or is it a made-up name? Anyone knows that a bank in UK will not deposit the entire sum until the expectations are met. Central Bank Governor Dr. Nandalal Weerasinghe is the ideal person who can make the true details available. The Central Bank has a financial crimes investigation division. The Central Bank Governor must explain this to the people on how is it possible for such an amount to be moved. If that is not possible, it leads to more questions. If it was a lie, why was it made public?
වෙන්න බැරි දෙයක් නම් එතකොට තව ප්‍රශ්න මාලාවක් අනිවාර්යෙන් ජනිත වෙනවා. ගොතපු බොරුවක් නම්. ඇයි මෙහෙම දෙයක් පිටත දැම්මේ?
Environmentalists filed a complaint with the Commission to investigate allegations of bribery or corruption. They alleged that Sri Lanka's renewable energy and green hydrogen production was vested with overseas firms in a fraudulent and corrupt manner. Environmentalists say that Sri Lanka's future energy production requirements, domestic energy security, depriving the right to obtain energy at a minimum price, giving energy rights to foreign companies in a fraudulent and corrupt manner should be investigated, in addition to the conduct of the Ministry of Power and Energy and agencies that operate under it.
We can purchase a unit for just 8 rupees and 50 cents. However, the energy sources that we can tap for tree, solar and wind power have been handed over to India's Adani Group without calling for a tender. Unit of electricity is to be purchased for 20 rupees or more from them. That is a very bad precedent. It will have a negative impact on Sri Lanka's energy security and sovereignty. When Sri Lanka's renewable energy is being awarded to Adani Group, green hydrogen production rights are also being awarded to an Indian group under the name Green Star Hydrogen. The Ceylon Petroleum Corporation, without any legal right, has inked an agreement for a feasibility study. We filed a complaint over the matter.
The chairman of the Public Utilities Commission of Sri Lanka, Janaka Ratnayaka, warned that the proposed Electricity Reforms Act would lead to multiple issues and complaints.
The proposed Electricity Reform Act of 2023 is a very confidential document and has not been made available to the media. The objective of introducing this is to do away with all the acts and amendments, including the Electricity Act of 1967 and the Electricity Act of 2009, and introduce a completely new legislation. In addition, it is expected to divide the Ceylon Electricity Board into 14 separate entities and vest the assets with companies that are set up as per the provisions of the Companies Act No. 7 of 2007. They have proposed for one company to be vested with the assets of the Lakshapana complex in Kehelgamu Oya and the power plants located next to the Muskelia Oya. A similar exercise is to be followed with regards to the power plants located along the Mahaveli River. The same goes for the management of the power plant located along the Kukule Ganga and Uma Oya. We would never be able to fathom the situation that would arise when the Norochole coal power plant is also subject to the same exercise of being vested with a company. Furthermore, the Kalinitissa and Sapugaskanda power plants will be given to another company, while the 109 megawatt wind power plant in Mannar will also go to another company. Moreover, the transmission system will also go to another, while generation and purchasing will be done by another company. The Public Utilities Commission of Sri Lanka has issued 4 distribution licenses. The new act proposes 4 new companies for that purpose, and another private company for the assets of the matter that were not mentioned earlier. Interestingly, another firm will be introduced to manage the CEB EPF. They are trying to replace the Public Utilities Commission of Sri Lanka with an Electricity Commission. The Cabinet has not granted permission for such a thing. When the PUCSL acts as per the law, the Ministry of Power and Energy and Vijay Sekara become uncomfortable and they want to abolish the PUCSL. The vote of 113 MPs is necessary to remove me from the post. As per this new act, the Minister can appoint members to the Electricity Commission and remove them as he pleases. The governing structure comes under the Minister. The Minister aims to replace the PUCSL with this new commission and do whatever he pleases. The CEB is one entity. If they cannot manage one entity, how will they manage 14? This is deception and fraud. This is being done to divide the CEB and hand it over to those who they see fit.
මක් රෝඩාවක් මේන් කරන්නේ මේ සමාගම් වලට කඩලා ඉදිරියේදී Tamanට අවශ්‍ය පුද්ගලයන්ට මේ ආයතන බාර දෙන එක. චෝදනා පහ කෙල්ල කරා.
He had made 5 allegations and I responded to them. It was to be tabled in Parliament last week, but it was not. I am waiting for 113 MPs to support my removal. Without that, I cannot be removed. I will not leave until then. With a new commission, this commission will lose power. Such is the conduct of these politicians.
මේ දේශපාලනඥයෝ කරන්නේ. නෑ ඒත් මම වයින් කරන්න බෑ ඉතින්.
They cannot remove me. For that, the special act must be changed. When the duties are removed, the operations are limited.
කාර්යභාරය සීමා වෙනවා. ඒක ඇත්ත.
Experts opined that a great deal of attention needs to be given to the pension funds like the Employees Provident Fund if any action is being taken concerning domestic debt when implementing the agreements reached with the International Monetary Fund. They point out that if a large amount of the debt obtained from the EPF is slashed in the process of restructuring domestic debt, it would negatively impact the beneficiaries.
A week ago, Sri Lanka's president told Parliament that the island nation's total debt was $83.6 billion with foreign debt at $41.5 billion and domestic debt at $42.1 billion. On the 12th of April 2022, the central bank governor and the finance secretary speaking to reporters said that Sri Lanka will temporarily suspend foreign debt payments to avoid a hard default. It's been over a year since Sri Lanka decided to suspend foreign debt payments. According to the program implemented by Sri Lanka in collaboration with the IMF, the ability to repay debt has become a key condition for restabilizing the country's economy. For that, it is expected that a significant part of the total amount of debt taken by Sri Lanka will be slashed, while a concessionary program will be introduced for the repayment of another portion of debt. Foreign Minister Alisa Buprisi said Sri Lanka hopes to reduce the debt obligation by at least $14 billion.
We are hoping to get a moratorium from external creditors for the repayment of debt. If this process gets discussed, we hope to reduce the debt obligations by $14 billion. We are hoping to create a scenario to repay the debt by 2027.
The necessary measures that will be taken with regard to foreign debt are still in the discussion stage. In the meantime, the government has now focused its attention towards domestic debt. According to the governor of the central bank, domestic debt optimization is expected and the necessary measures that are required are still in discussion level. The central bank explained that the measures that would be taken regarding the amount it has borrowed from treasury bills as optimization. Although it can be explained in the sense of optimization, the exact steps that would be taken have not yet been explained. In the meantime, the central bank has announced that there is an opportunity to voluntarily decide and take steps regarding treasury bonds. According to the data presented to the investors by the governor of the central bank and the secretary of the finance ministry in March, by the end of 2022, the government borrowed $11.4 billion through treasury bills. The highest percentage of treasury bills of 62.4% was borrowed by the central bank. The total amount of debt the government borrowed through treasury bonds was $24 billion. 42.7% of it was obtained from pension funds, including the Employees Provident Fund. W.M. Sevasinghe, senior lecturer in economics at the University of Kelaniya, elaborated.
Debt restructuring is basically done in two ways. Extension of time in one way, and the other way is to cut a certain amount of installments and interest for the loan. The main question is what will happen to the EPF. When a certain amount of loans are cut, it will directly affect the employees. The President said in his speech on May Day that there will be no harm to the members or the beneficiaries of the EPF. But he does not say how there will be no harm. Because now if we cut a certain percentage of the fund that the government has taken as a loan, there is no explanation as to how it will not affect the creditors. About 93% of the money of the Employees Provident Fund has been proposed for lending to the government.
According to the report of the Auditor General who investigated the bond transactions, the loss to the EPF from the bond scam at that time was 8.7 billion rupees. Experts point out that measures should be taken to prevent such a situation from occurring again. This is Professor Aryaratna Herath of the Peradeniya University.
In the case of the central bank bond scam that was talked about many years ago, it is actually taking money from a government bank at a very low interest and investing in bonds. It is a third 30-year-long bond investment, and there is still a large amount of money that should go to the society and the Sri Lankan economy. In the irregular transaction, we have to pay more, and now as a result, we are unable to pay our domestic debt. That is why even the International Monetary Fund is asking for debt restructuring.
Starting the IMF debate, the President gave an assurance in the Parliament and at the United National Party May Day rally on May 1st that he would act in a manner that would not harm the Employees' Provident Fund. It should be appreciated. However, when News First contacted the EPF department, it said that the government has not called for any discussion with regard to domestic debt restructuring. The Employees' Provident Fund is currently the largest and most widespread social security scheme in Sri Lanka and can be considered as a little peace of mind for the employees of private sector firms, state-sponsored corporations, statutory boards and private businesses. The aim of the EPF is to assure financial stability to the employee in the retirement stage of life and to reward the employee for his or her role in the economic growth of the country. Therefore, isn't it important to make decisions regarding the EPF with a more comprehensive discussion and proper planning?
Parliamentarian Dr. Hariniyama Surya expressed the following at an event held in Colombo to celebrate the 26th anniversary of the All Ceylon Samurdhi Managers Association. Recently, it was reported that the inflation index has gone down. Do you know the reason for this decline? The reason for this is the reduction of our expenditure. People have reduced the amount they eat. They have reduced the amount they spend on education. They have cut down the amount they spend for health. People are not travelling as much as they did before. This cutback of spendings affected the demand in the market, which has eventually affected the inflation index to go down. The reason why there is enough fuel in the market is because we have reduced our consumption. When fuel is given according to a quota, you cannot buy sufficient amounts of fuel. This has resulted in us limiting our travel. When food prices increase, the consumption reduces automatically. This is how they have controlled inflation. Now they are telling that in order to carry out the IMF program, which is in play, they need to have some stability in our accounts in order to stabilize the country's economy. Controlling our inflation and reducing the budget deficit are some of the conditions imposed by the IMF. Yes, we need to implement these controls under the IMF. In the end, the general public will have to face the consequences of this crisis, while those who are responsible for this crisis are the very same ones who orchestrate this. They are the least affected.
වැඩෙන්නේ මේ වර්බෝධයට වග නොකිව යුතු බහුතර ජනතාව මත.
Air Chief Marshal Vivek Ram Chaudhary, Chief of the Air Staff of the Indian Air Force, called on Commander of the Air Force Air Marshal Sudarshana Patirana at the Air Force headquarters.
Air Chief Marshal Vivek Ram Chaudhary, Chief of the Air Staff of Indian Air Force, was received upon arrival by the Commanding Officer SLAF Station Colombo, Air Commodore Suresh Fernando. A guard of honour was conferred by the Colour Squadron of the Sri Lanka Air Force. The Indian Air Chief is currently visiting Sri Lanka on the invitation of the Commander of Sri Lanka Air Force that aims to facilitate discussions on the development of cooperation between regional air forces, joint training, technical knowledge exchange and expansion of maritime surveillance operations. Air Chief Marshal Chaudhary also met with the Chief of the Staff and the Air Force Board of Management, after which official plaques were exchanged between the two Air Chiefs at the Commander's office. The Chief of the Air Staff of Indian Air Force, Air Chief Marshal Vivek Ram Chaudhary, met with the Commander of the Sri Lanka Navy, Vice Admiral Priyantha Pereira, at the Navy Headquarters, Colombo. Upon his arrival, the visiting Chief of the Air Staff of Indian Air Force was welcomed at the portals of the Navy Headquarters in compliance with naval tradition. The two military top brass exchanged views on several matters of bilateral importance while recalling the long-standing friendship between the two countries. The cordial meeting culminated with an exchange of mementos as tokens of memory of the visit to the Navy Headquarters.
Minister of Public Security Tiran Alas issued a statement thanking all the political parties and organizations for the peaceful conduct of the May Day rallies and processions held yesterday to mark International Labour Day. It states that the minister thanked them for not obstructing the duties of the police who were deployed to maintain law and order and for supporting the police officers in exercising their duties. Minister Tiran Alas stated that a special security program was in place at every single May Day celebration, and he thanked all the police officers who performed their duties with great dedication to public safety. President's Counsel Saleh Peris commented on the anti-terrorism bill at an event organized by the Bar Association of Sri Lanka.
We have to look at the new anti-terrorism bill not in isolation. We have to look at the anti-terrorism bill in the light of how the PTA and the emergency regulations have been used by the state in the past. Without looking at the Sri Lankan context, without looking at what has happened in the past, we will not be able to realize the full impact of the anti-terrorism bill. So we have instances where the political authorities and the CID or the police have abused this right, the Prevention of Terrorism Act, to detain people who are not to their liking. So maybe political rivals, business rivals, or merely because of a person's ethnicity. Now the new law provides for the detention orders to be issued by the respective Deputy Inspectors General. We have approximately 50 Deputy Inspectors General in the country. Last week we saw certain senior DIGs complaining about their transfers, and it was clear that there is an allegation of politicization. All what I'm saying is the ATA provisions are worse. If you look at the Supreme Court judgment on the Easter Sunday attack, the court cites how the security apparatus failed. Especially the failure of intelligence. The intelligence warned. But between the intelligence warning and the security apparatus getting into action, there was a gap. How do you want to strengthen that gap? I don't think this law addresses that at all.
The Nirpakshika Aragalakaruwan, or members of the non-partisan struggle, protested against the anti-terrorism bill opposite the Fort Railway Station. They performed a street drama to highlight their concerns.
Our request is for the anti-terrorism bill to be abolished and not just withdrawn. This is being brought to silence the voices and label the people as terrorists. They are trying to create fear among those who stand up for the people.
News first with the people.
3 days from now is the Vesak full moon Poya day. The significance of Vesak lies with the Buddha and his universal peaceful message to mankind. Tonight, we take a look at the Vesak pandals that would attract visitors from all over.
The Vesak pandal is unique among Buddhist cultural creations. As it was then, it is a brilliant and colourful medium of expression. With the rapid pace of development, Vesak pandals can be seen as an audio-visual design combined with modern technology. When examining the history of the Vesak pandals, we also remember the early human era. Ancient man used to deliver message by hanging leaves on wooden poles raised high on mountain tops. This message medium, which developed gradually, later took root as an advanced art in Sri Lanka. Pandal art in India spread to many countries like Burma, Siam, Cambodia, China, Japan and Korea, and its development took place in the cultural environments of each country. Many years ago, Sri Lanka had colourful pandals depicting various events. Later on, those inspired the modern Vesak pandals.
Accelerating Higher Education Expansion and Development, also known as AHEAD Operations, and the Ministry of Education organized an event on recognizing successful commercialization of university research today at the BMICH.
Recognizing successful commercialization of university research was organized by Accelerating Higher Education Expansion and Development, also known as AHEAD Operations, and the Ministry of Education was held at the BMICH on Tuesday. The event was attended by the country manager of the World Bank, Chio Kanda, Suren Raghavan, State Minister of Higher Education, and the chairman of the United Grants Commission, Professor Sampath Amaratunga.
Going forward, the universities need to continue to support and undertake research that is policy relevant and generate innovations that are useful for firms and companies. Much more is needed to address the challenges facing higher education sector in Sri Lanka. We want to encourage the government to explore innovative approaches to financing research and innovation activities in the future. Bold policy actions and investments are crucial to enable Sri Lanka to address many and complex economic challenges the country is facing at the current time. The World Bank Group is preparing its next country partnership framework.
Recognizing successful commercialization of university research was funded by the World Bank.
We need to ask what's happening in the higher education sector in the bigger countries. If you take America, UK, Australia, India, Japan, those 10 top countries in the higher education sector, there is a paradigm shift that is taking place. If we need to safeguard the state higher education sector, there is a fundamental demand that comes to us internally and externally. Internally from our new generation of graduates, externally from the world forces of higher education.
In your latest weather update, the landslide early warnings issued for several districts have been further extended. The National Building Research Organisation announced this evening that the landslide warnings have been extended for the division secretariats of the Badulla, Kegol and Matara districts.
Early landslide warnings were issued to Haldumulla and Passara divisional secretariats in the Badulla district and the Kegol divisional secretariat in the Kegol district. Landslide warnings were issued to Kotapola and Paskoda divisional secretariats of the Matara district as well. The landslide warning will be in effect until 4 p.m. tomorrow. Meanwhile, vehicular movement along the Alla-Vallavaya main road was interrupted due to a mound of earth falling onto the road in the Karandagolla area. A heavy rainfall was reported in the Valimada area last evening. Another earth mound fell onto the Nuvarelia Valimada road in the Nugutalava area owing to inclement weather. The meteorology department says that the inclement weather will prevail over the next few days. There are signs of thunderclouds developing in the atmosphere. Rainfall can be expected in the coastal belt in the western and southern parts of the island, even during the morning hours of the day. Rains are expected in the coastal areas of Mana, Putlam, Gampaha, Colombo, Kalutura, Gaul and Matara districts during the next few days. Temporary strong gusty winds are expected with thunder showers. The general public is kindly requested to take adequate precautions to minimize damages caused by temporary localized strong winds and lightning during thunder showers. Try to avoid open places, especially between 3 to 5 in the afternoon. It is advised for you to be in a closed space during lightning.
Two new mushroom species and a new record of a mushroom species have been identified from Sri Lanka.
The new species of mushroom were discovered by Dr. Aseni Navodaitrivira from her Mai Phang Luang University in Thailand and the Chinese Academy of Sciences and her research team. The research was guided by Professor Samantha Sikhatra Ratna. The new species from Sri Lanka have been named as Candolomyces ruhnensis and Termitomyces srilankensis. A new record of Crepidotus striatus was reported from the wet zone of Sri Lanka, mainly in Kanneliya, and it previously only recorded in China.
In 2023, we discovered the new mushroom species and a new record of a species. Sri Lanka's records on mushrooms date back to the 1700s. It was only after the year 2000 that a proper research on mushrooms were carried out. This is also the first time that a mushroom species was named after a university. This was the first record of a Candolomyces species. In addition, we also discovered Termitomyces srilankensis. The other record was of Crepidotus striatus from the Kanneliya forest. This is the second ever record of this species. It was identified as a new species in China.
Bharti Airtel and Dialog Axiata said they have entered into a binding term sheet to combine the operations of Bharti Airtel Lanka and Dialog.
In a release issued Tuesday, the company said discussions with respect to the proposed merger are ongoing between the two parties and with relevant regulatory authorities. In Tuesday's statement, Bharti said it envisages Airtel being granted a stake in Dialog, representing the fair value of Airtel Lanka. The company will accordingly be issued new shares in Dialog upon completion of the transactions.
LP gas prices are likely to be reduced again tomorrow.
Litrogas said that the price of a 12.5 kilogram domestic gas cylinder will be reduced by around 100 rupees on Wednesday. Litro chairman Mudita Piri said that the official announcement will be made on Wednesday.
Sri Lankans who were part of the crew detained along with a vessel by Nigerian authorities have been released following a out-of-court settlement.
8 Sri Lankans were among the crew released by the Federal High Court of Nigeria in Port Harcourt on the 28th of April 2023, along with the vessel MT Heroic Idun, which was under detention over dispute oil smuggling allegations since August 2022 in Nigeria and the Equatorial Guinea. Out of the court settlement reached between the Nigerian authorities and Idum Maritime Limited, the vessel owner enabled the High Court to end the detention of the vessel and dropped off the charges. The vessel was detained along with 26 crew members, including 8 Sri Lankans. The Foreign Ministry said that Sri Lanka will coordinate with the vessel owner regarding the repatriation of the Sri Lankan crew at the earliest, once the conditions are fulfilled by the shipping company, which will arrange the safe return of the crew. Sri Lanka's High Commissioner to Kenya ensured payment of salaries and other entitlements to the Sri Lankans in full. The High Commissioner jointly worked with the Indian High Commissioner in Abuja, as the crew also comprised 16 Indian nationals.
A suspect who was involved in smuggling drugs and Kerala cannabis targeting school children was arrested by the police special task force.
The raid was carried out in the Red Banawata area in Colombo 15 in the Blue Mandal police jurisdiction. The raid was carried off based on a tip-off received by the officers of the Special Raid Unit at the Special Task Force Headquarters camp. The suspect, who was peddling drugs and Kerala cannabis targeting school children, was arrested with 202 pre-grabbed drugs, 51 grams of Kerala cannabis and cash worth 5,650 rupees. The suspect is a 54-year-old resident from Alutmawat, Colombo 15. For further investigations, the case has been handed over to the Blue Mandal Police.
The LOLC Divisavya program, launched to lend a helping hand to students who are the future of Sri Lanka, continued centering the Jaffna district today.
Under the Divisavya program, books and stationery items were provided to school students from the most economically challenged parts of Sri Lanka. This worthy initiative is a collaboration between the LOLC Group and the Ministry of Education. The LOLC Divisavya program continued today, centering the Jaffna district. Under the Divisavya program, books and stationery items are provided to the students of the ATMM College in Poongidithivu West, Rajarajeshwari Tamil Mix College in Poongidithivu, Poongidithivu Thirunavukarsu College, Subramania College, Mangaya Karsi College and the Sri Skanda College. The LOLC Divisavya program will continue in their endeavour to support the education of these children.
Now on to international news. Over 3 months ago, the Treasury warned that the US government has hit its borrowing limit, also known as debt ceiling. Since then, the US Treasury has been taking extraordinary measures to ensure the government can continue to pay its bills.
However, as time is ticking, the Congress and the White House have until late summer, which is around in August, to raise the debt limit. Experts say if the debt ceiling is not raised, the US government will default on its bill, a historic with likely catastrophic consequences. What is a debt ceiling? The debt ceiling is a limit on the amount of money the US government can borrow to pay for services such as Social Security, Medicare and the military. Congress is in charge of setting the debt limit, which currently stands at $31.4 trillion. The debt ceiling has been raised 78 times since 1960. What happens if the US defaults? The US Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen said in a letter to Congress earlier this year, quote, failure to meet the government's obligation would cause irreparable harm to the US economy, the livelihoods of all Americans and global financial stability, unquote. What are the main contributors to federal government spending? The biggest chunk of US government spending goes to the mandatory programs such as Social Security, Medicaid and Medicare, which comprise nearly half of the overall budget.
The United Nations Refugee Agency has said more than 800,000 people may flee Sudan as a result of the ongoing conflict. Sri Lankan embassy in Saudi Arabia tweeted that the third batch of 11 Sri Lankans evacuated from the Republic of Sudan have arrived in Jeddah.
The embassies of Sri Lanka in Riyadh and Cairo and the Consulate General of Sri Lanka in Jeddah have been working with the authorities of the Royal Government of Saudi Arabia and the Government of India to evacuate the Sri Lankans living in Khartoum who had requested to be rescued. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs continues to monitor the situation in the Republic of Sudan and remains ready to assist the Sri Lankan nationals who are still in the Republic of Sudan if and when a request is made for a repatriation. The High Commission of Sri Lanka in Nairobi and the Sri Lankan Embassy in Muscat also extended assistance in the evacuation process. UNHCR Assistant High Commissioner for Refugees told a member state briefing in Geneva, Switzerland, quote, "In consultation with all concerned governments and partners, we have arrived at a planning figure of 815,000 people that may flee into the 7 neighboring countries," unquote. Air raids on Monday hit the northern and eastern parts of the capital Khartoum, despite numerous ceasefire attempts. According to the Sudan Doctors Syndicate, 436 civilians are dead so far and 2,175 have been injured.
And with that, we wrap up primetime news here on TV1. For more news, log on to our award-winning website, that is www.newsfirst.lk. For the News First team, I'm David Paldan. Take care and good night.